Hello, welcome to today's live. I injured myself recently, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. And we're also going to talk about bone health, because although I did injure myself, I didn't injure myself as badly as I could have, and that's because my bones are very healthy. So, let me tell you about my injury first of all. So, as many of you know, I like to rollerblade. I've got a half cast at the minute, so this isn't a full cast. On this side of the wrist that you can see, the side towards you, I've got like a half plate of cast material. So it's like rock, it's like stone, it's really hard. And my wrist is basically immobilized. As you can see, I can hardly move it. And yesterday, or the day before, which is when I actually injured myself, I couldn't even move my wrist this much, but I'm gaining back a lot of function without pain, which is good. So I was just rollerblading, wasn't doing anything crazy, anything special, just fell over and put a lot of my weight on my left hand, and it caused the tendon that's responsible for the flexion. So I can't really show you, obviously, because I'm holding the phone with my other hand. But if you can imagine the thing that moves the hand this way, the flexion in the wrist from left to right, the tendon on the outside of the hand it was quite difficult to understand because it was a Portuguese doctor. So I think it's very badly torn. There's no bone damage, which is good. And I think with the fall that I had, if I didn't have such healthy bones, I think a break would have been very possible, because you do have a lot of very small, delicate bones in your wrist. So we're going to talk about how to maintain healthy bones in just a minute. I'm just going to finish up giving you some details about this fall. So, even though I fell, I was wearing protection. So I skate. It's quite a sight for most people. I usually don't wear a shirt, and I've got all of my pads on. So I've got helmet, knee pads, elbow pads, and wrist pads. Although the pads on the wrists aren't really so much to stop you from impact damage, it's more about stopping the ligaments and the tendons in the wrist from being overstretched when you fall. And I think this again is another reason that I now only have a half cast instead of a full cast. So when you have this wrist strap on, it makes so you can't really move your wrist very much. It immobilizes your wrist a lot. So if you fall, and then it puts a lot of pressure to twist or rotate the wrist in a way that it shouldn't go, instead of all that force being put on the tendons and the ligaments and the muscles in the wrist, it goes on the fabric material of the protection instead. So yes, I know I look silly when I wear it, but I look less silly because now I'll only have this for 3 weeks instead of 3 months. So I'm not unhappy about that. This is just a part of life. You're going to hurt yourself all the time. I was actually telling Joanna earlier, and my nan, I'm really happy that I am now well enough, that I'm healthy enough to be able to go outside and be so active that I can cause myself a physical injury like this. Because if you go back even 3 years, maybe even 2 years, the thought of me going out and rollerblading to the point of being able to like really fall and injure myself just wouldn't have even been possible. Just being stuck inside, no energy, just being able to like go out and walk was I was very happy about that at the time, but now being able to go out and skate, really cool. So yes, I've fallen over. I can't skate for 3 weeks, which is okay. It's really given me a new understanding of how difficult it is to live with one hand. So if you're watching and you have had one of your wrists or one of your arms immobilized at some point, make sure you leave me your tips, because without Joanna, I don't know how I would survive. It's the simple things, you know, like washing your hands. Try and wash your hands with doing it one hand at a time. Really hard. Try opening a bottle, or even like a packet. It's really difficult. So yeah, I'm struggling with that. It will be better in a few days, because at the minute I can't really do anything. I have no grip strength in this hand yet, and it still hurts. When I've got some grip strength back, I'll be able to grab things and do some stuff with this hand, but it's pretty much just dead weight at the minute. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the sciencey stuff. This is probably why you're here. Now I've got my little bit out of the way. So let's look at healthy bones. How can we build healthy bones? And first of all, let's look at like what is a healthy bone supposed to be able to do. So bones are really hard. They're really tough. and I think it's quite common knowledge that we have a lot of calcium in our bones, and this is what gives them this rigidity, this crystalline, this rock-like toughness. So calcium obviously being a rock, like chalk, we get a lot of that mineral toughness from this calcium. However, the calcium, and it's actually more than calcium, there's other minerals, there's magnesium, there's lots of trace minerals as well. These minerals don't do you any good if they're not actually in the bone. So if you're eating lots of calcium, for example, and your body isn't storing any of it in your bones, it's not doing you any good, because that's where it's really needed. So the way the body transports these minerals into the bones is through vitamin D and vitamin K2. These are sort of like signaling molecules that tell your body to move the calcium from the blood into the bones. So this is this has like a double benefit, because first of all, the calcium's getting in the bones so you can have strong bones, but it's also pulling the calcium out of your blood vessels, which is good, because in these cases of things like heart disease, the real problem is the calcification of the arteries, and this is because there's calcium in the blood that isn't being moved from the blood into the bones. So if we can provide enough of this signaling molecule, not only do we prevent this atherosclerotic plaques of calcium, this calcifications in the arteries, but we also move that calcium to where it should be in this bone matrix inside your bones. So vitamin D, D3 and vitamin K2, think of them as like signaling molecules. They tell these minerals to move out of the bloodstream into the bones where we need them. So they're very important. So if you've got either deficiencies of either of those, definitely want to make sure you get those checked. If you are missing your gallbladder, or you have fat malabsorption problems, both of these vitamins are fat soluble in nature. So D3 and K2, along with vitamin A and E, are fat soluble, which means they're dissolved in fat. So if you don't digest fats very well, you also, by definition, cannot digest these vitamins very well. So make sure that if you do have problems with those, you're supporting your fat digestion, however that looks for you. Some people need bile, some people need digestive enzymes. If you're missing your gallbladder, you're probably going to need digestive support for the rest of your life, because that is a part that we need, and if you don't have it anymore, you're going to have to support the function of that organ that's missing. Even if you have fat malabsorption problems, find some way to support that in a way that that actually works for your body. So that looks different for everybody. So that's really important. But bones are more than this. Bones, they're not supposed to be brittle. They're not supposed to be so rock-like, so crystalline, that when you fall on them, for example, they just snap immediately. They're supposed to bend. They're actually very, very flexible. I watched a video of somebody getting real human bones, forearms, and putting weight on them and watching them bend, and they bend a surprising amount. And this is because our bones aren't just this big, inflexible rod of stone. They're actually this crystalline matrix of calcium and other minerals is deposited in the bones in another matrix of collagen. So collagen, you probably know what collagen is. It's the primary constituent of our skin and our face. See, I'm getting some use back out of my hand. I wouldn't have been able to do anything with it yesterday. I nearly picked my nose. It's getting there. So we don't just need collagen for our skin and these things. We need it in our bones too, because all of this calcium and other minerals, these things that provide rigidity and this solid strength to our bones, they also need this flexibility, this flexion, this ability to bend under tension instead of just breaking. And this comes from a good, healthy collagen matrix. So making sure that you have enough collagen in your diet and that your body is able to use this collagen to build your bones up is also very important. It's not, and this is the tricky part with health, is the balance is always somewhere in the middle. You don't want super rigid bones, because then they become brittle, but then you also don't want floppy bones, because then they're kind of useless. They give you no rigidity and structure, and they're very weak. And that's basically what rickets is. And you'd see that demonstrated in primarily the legs, because obviously you've got a lot more weight on the legs. So for those of you who don't know what rickets is, it's basically a vitamin D deficiency, where the calcium isn't being told to get put into the bones. And it's often in children more often than not, because this is when they're developing, so the demand is higher for these vitamins and minerals. And the legs kind of bow out, they sort of bend out at the sides, and this is because while the bone has that flexibility from this collagen matrix, it doesn't have this durability and strength from the calcium and the other minerals that have been pushed into the bone with the vitamin D and the vitamin K2. So health is that little sort of patch in the middle between flexibility and strength, and it's this place in the middle where you've got a high level of durability, but you're also not so durable that it's brittle, and it has some level of flexibility to it. So that's sort of more multi-applicable to anything. Health is always somewhere in the middle. It's that sweet spot right in the middle. So so let's talk more about the collagen. So obviously collagen is a protein, so it's made of amino acids. So first of all, you're going to have to make sure that you have these things present in your diet. So the best way that we can make sure that we're getting the right type of nutrients, and I know this is a very cliche thing because it sounds so stupid, it sounds so simple, it's like, how can that be right? But it's true, and this is one reason that bone broth is really cool, because bone broth is liquid, so you're basically cooking the bones, so you're going to get all of the minerals out, you're going to get the magnesium, you're going to get the calcium, you're going to get all of the other things, the phosphorus, the other minerals that you need. You're also going to be getting the collagen matrix that holds the bone together. You're going to be getting some of that collagen, and if you're making good bone broth, you're probably doing it with the ligaments and the joints, the tendons. Those are all very collagen rich, and also probably some skin as well, which is basically just completely collagen. So you're going to be getting a lot of that too. And bones, they have bone marrow in. Bone marrow is predominantly fat, so you're going to be getting plenty of fat soluble vitamins in there. You're going to be getting your some vitamin D, you're going to be getting some vitamin K2. These nutrients, the vitamin D and the vitamin K2, fluctuate significantly based on the health of the animal that you're eating. So vitamin D, I want you to change how you think of vitamin D. Don't think about vitamin D as a vitamin, think about it as a hormone. So hormones are signaling molecules that tell the body how to function. We can actually produce vitamin D in our body, so vitamin D itself can't be a vitamin. The actual vitamin is the sunlight. So think of vitamin D as a hormone. So if you're eating, say, an animal product, say you're eating, so we were talking about bone, so say you're making bone broth from a cow or a chicken that never gets to go outside, they're never getting exposed to this stimulus that causes them to synthesize vitamin D. So they're going to have very low levels of vitamin D present in the animal foods that you eat from them. And the same is true for vitamin K2. So vitamin K2 is a nutrient that animals synthesize from vitamin K1. So vitamin K1, which is phytoquinone, is present in basically green plants. So if the animals that you're eating are eating their ancestrally appropriate diet, so they're eating grass and they're eating leaves and they're eating like dandelions, and say it's like fish, for example, if they're eating algae and they're eating the food that they're supposed to eat, they'll have high levels of this vitamin K2 because there's vitamin K1 present in the diet that they're eating, so they can convert the K1 into K2. And the same is probably going to be true with the vitamin D, because if any animal is eating its appropriate diet, it's probably outside, because basically every animal that's eating its appropriate diet needs to be outside to eat it, so you're going to get both at the same time. So this is why it's important, the quality of the animal that you're eating. It's not just about eat the animal, it's about eat a high quality animal. So this K2 is then synthesized by these animals from this vitamin K1, which we can then eat. And it's the substance that's present in these animal products that makes them yellow. So think about the difference in the yellow colour from a chicken's egg that has been in a cage its whole life and has never seen the sun, and one that's outside in pasture all day. The colour difference is absolutely, it's absurd. Like you can't ignore that colour difference. And then look at a cow. So let's look at, say for example, let's look at butter. Butter's a really good example. Look at grass-fed butter, so maybe something like Kerrygold, and then compare that to like the store brand version of butter. The store brand version is either going to be pale and white, or it's going to have a dye added to it because they know that butter's supposed to look yellow. We all know butter is supposed to look yellow, and this is because it has vitamin K2 in it. And the grass-fed version of this is going to be this golden yellow, and you're going to taste it. It's going to taste creamy, and that's because your body has sensors to tell you when a food is high in certain nutrients, and that's what makes food taste good. So that's really the secret to good quality, tasty food, is make sure that it is good quality, and then it has a lot of nutrients in it, and then it tastes nice. So that's really the secret. If you find your cooking might be a bit bland, maybe the food that you're eating is depleted of nutrients, because your body can taste that. So I find that it's very uncommon to have a deficiency of calcium in the diet, unless you're on an extremely restrictive diet, and even then, you're probably still getting enough calcium. Calcium intake is really only an issue for growing kids, because once you've built up that level of calcium in your bones, your body's really good at recycling it, so it can reuse it again and again and again. However, calcium's going to come out, and then you need to make sure that you've got the vitamin D and the vitamin K to push it back in, because your blood is varying in alkalinity and acidity all of the time, and it needs to stay in a very specific range, and if it becomes slightly too acidic, your body will leach the calcium out of your bones to neutralise that. So we need to make sure that we've got other molecules present, like the vitamin D and the vitamin K2, to push the magnesium, the calcium, back into the bones where they're supposed to be. And we need to make sure that they have this collagen matrix present, so making sure that we're eating, say, like a bone broth, or we're eating... if you're eating from nose to tail animal products, you'll pretty much be covered with this. So don't just eat the chicken breast. Make sure that you have the skin with it. Don't just go for the cod. Make sure you go for the salmon, the wild salmon with the skin on it as well, because you're going to be getting all of these things. And we didn't even touch on the omegas and things like that, omega-3s, omega-6s, and you're going to get more of those in these wild fish. But for today, I just wanted to really focus on the bone health, and the biggest things that you have to consider are the collagen matrix and the vitamin D and the vitamin K. One final point before we finish is exercise and movement. So there's something called Wolff's Law, which is where when a part of your body is very slightly damaged, it recovers and builds itself back stronger. So when you're outside exercising, especially like jumping type movements, you're going to be creating very tiny fractures in your bones all of the time. And this is going to stimulate them to rebuild, regrow, and build up stronger and more durable. So this is why I'm okay with having this fall. Because as I fall and I injure myself, I know my body's going to build itself back up stronger. And all of the bones all the way up my arm, from this impact, there's going to be tiny, tiny micro fractures all the way up. And every single one of those, because I'm making sure I've got vitamin D and I've got vitamin K, I'm getting my sun, I'm eating my grass-fed butter, it's going to make sure that my body is building these microfractures back up even stronger than before. This is Wolff's Law. You can look it up. It's quite an interesting law. It doesn't just work for bones, although that's specifically what it is. It's also for muscles too, ligaments, tendons, all of these things. So being ever so slightly injured is actually a good thing. Question before we finish up. Andre says, do you think that animal-based diet is the most nutritious and has the least defensive chemicals as well as the biggest bioavailability when it comes to nutrients? Absolutely, Andre. That's absolutely the case. There is no... I really don't think there's any argument around the bioavailability of animal foods versus plant foods. If you think there's any kind of debate, I would say you probably haven't done your research, because animal foods simply do not contain anti-nutrients. There is no way around that. Doesn't mean I don't think plants are absolutely awesome. I love them. I love the spicy peppers. I just got some kimchi earlier. It is absolutely delicious. I wouldn't avoid plants unnecessarily. I'm not necessarily a pro-carnivore advocate, but I think to exclude animal products from the diet is, I would say, foolish, or maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't do it. I did it, and I wouldn't advise anybody do that. I don't think it's a smart idea. So yeah, that's everything from me. I've got a call coming up, so I'm going to have to end it now. I'll give you a little wave. I can just about manage a wave now, so I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.